A couple of weeks back, I saw a Vogue headline that read, "What to expect at the first AI Fashion Week." And it got me thinking, is the future actually here? Do we now live in an age where AI is inextricably linked to every facet of human life? Or at the very least, is that where we're headed? To me, that's equal parts exciting and terrifying, and I think a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty of it all. Like, what does an AI Fashion Week even mean? What does a fashion industry infused with artificial intelligence look like? Well, in this episode, that's what I want to dive into. I was thinking about saving this for a Patreon episode, which is where I usually talk about the inner workings of the fashion industry, but because there's been so much discussion around AI lately, I just figured I'd put this out there. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Figuring out where to start with such a large topic is honestly quite challenging, but I guess it's best to start with that AI Fashion Week I was talking about. AI Fashion Week was a first-of-its-kind competition backed by Spring Studios and the Revolve Group, where designers were invited to submit AI-generated collections. Generally speaking, the guidelines for the competition were pretty broad. You were allowed to use any AI tools you wanted, but you just had to make sure that the collections could actually be produced. The reason that's so important is because the 3 winners of the competition will actually get a chance to see their collections produced and then sold on Revolve's website. In total, they received more than 350 submissions, so that means there's already a couple hundred AI designers out there. The public voted on the top 10, and from there, a panel of judges, including the CEO of Revolve, will select the 3 winners. The top 10 have already been selected, and the results are honestly astounding. Some of the images have this slight gloss that hints they were generated by AI, but other than that, you would never really know. Honestly, it seems too good to be true, and for me, it raised a number of questions. First, how hard is it to design collections using AI? A number of collections from AI Fashion Week were designed using the same program called Midjourney. To put it simply, Midjourney takes text inputs and turns them into realistic images. So if you type in something like blue pineapple, it'll spit out a picture of a blue pineapple. There's a website where you can do this for free called Stable Diffusion, so I decided to get to the bottom of my question by trying to design a single outfit by myself. I wasn't really sure what to do, so I went with an outfit that looks like it was designed by Rick Owens as part of a Gucci collaboration. And hey, I have to say that I didn't hate the results. I don't know this for certain, but it sort of seems like Stable Diffusion was referencing Tom Ford's Gucci, while applying Rick Owens' approach to draping, and of course his signature black and white color palette. Now, these outfits may not be showstoppers, and may not be quite as good as anything that Rick Owens or Tom Ford would actually make, but I do think that you could put these outfits on a runway and no one would really notice. Now, this leads me to my other question, which is, how original are these AI-generated designs? By nature, these programs are trained by some sort of source material, meaning that an AI's understanding is limited to whatever data it has access to. In some cases, this could be the entire internet. So if I ask it to make a purple pair of shoes, it'll scan millions and millions of pictures of shoes on the internet, and then spit out a purple version of whatever it determines a shoe looks like. I'm oversimplifying, and someone with a more technical background could probably explain this much better than I am, but in a nutshell, that's how it works. This has opened AI-generated designs up to some criticism, because the argument could be made that the output is just a combination of designs that are already out there. There may be nothing exactly like it, but there may be a whole bunch of designs that are very, very similar. That's why very specific language prompts tend to work the best for creating truly unique images. For AI Fashion Week, I'm sure that the designers used incredibly specific prompts, and then they were also allowed to use Photoshop to make final edits. That said, they did create original pieces of work. It's just weird to think that any dress you see was generated with the help of other actual dresses that the artists probably didn't design. At face value, that doesn't sound great, but think about it this way. Anytime a designer sits down to design a dress, they're subconsciously recalling every dress they've ever seen, because that's how they've developed their own personal understanding of what a dress looks like. If you had never seen one before, you wouldn't know what one looks like, but because you've seen many of them before, you use them as a baseline for designing your own. So in theory, AI tools are doing the exact same thing, but the difference is that they've seen more dresses, they can recall them more accurately, and they can do it much more quickly. What humans have that AI tools don't is the artistic touch. Midjourney may be able to create a dress, but it doesn't have the ability to make value judgments, meaning it doesn't have the ability to determine whether it created something that looks good or something that looks bad. That's why so many AI generations look as wonky as they do, and that's why the most successful AI designers use incredibly detailed text prompts. They're determining what looks good, and they're just telling the AI to make that. Now, of course, there is some element of surprise here, because you never know exactly what the program is going to come up with. If that weren't the case, the designers would just design the collections without the help of AI, and I think that's the fun in this. Technically speaking, the AI programs have more limitations than the human mind, and that makes sense. AI is limited to what it can learn from its finite data source, whereas the human mind can wander in infinite directions. But the algorithms that drive AI may generate something that a human would never think to create, because AI cannot think exactly like a human. At least not yet. Whether or not there's artistic value in that, you can be the judge. In a best case scenario, AI could prove to be a great tool that helps designers instead of replacing them, but in a worst case scenario, there's a chance it could replace them. It's interesting to think about a world where design schools may have a class about writing AI prompts. We may not be at that point quite yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the very near future. I'm also going to predict that most major fashion houses, in some way, shape, or form, will begin adopting generative design in the next few years, and that will have more to do with marketing than it will with actual product design. Remember when NFTs first started coming out, and then in the blink of an eye, it seemed like every company was releasing an NFT under the guise that they were taking part in some technological transformation? Well, I think it's now safe to say that almost none of those companies cared about the technology behind NFTs. They were just trying to ride the wave and make a quick buck while doing so. Make no mistake, I don't think that AI is going to be the same type of fad that NFTs were. In fact, I'm confident that AI is here to stay. But I do foresee a ton of brands releasing AI-generated collections just so they can market them as AI-generated collections. It's a hot topic right now that they know will get attention, perhaps even create controversy, so I fully expect that. But in my mind, the real winners of the AI revolution will be the brands that adopt AI for the purpose of idea generation, not to take over the entire design process. So hopefully that's a sufficient primer on generative design. But the design process is just one small section of the fashion industry where AI is expected to have a significant impact. So next, let's talk about the people buying these designs, the consumer. Generally speaking, there are two approaches that a brand can take to sell their products. A, they can make products that people want to buy, or B, they can make people want to buy their products. On paper, that's pretty simple, but these are parts of the fashion industry where AI promises to have an outsized impact. Let's start with making products that people already want to buy. The whole idea here is to predict what style of clothing people are going to want at some point in the future, and then making those clothes so that they're available when that time comes. This is what we call trend forecasting, and it plays a huge role in managing supply and demand. As we all know, trends come and go in the blink of an eye. What's popular today may not be popular tomorrow. But because that's where the money is, many brands will try to chase trends, meaning that as soon as they realize a certain style is popular, they'll start pumping out their own designs in that style. But like I said, trends come and go, so what seems to happen more often than not is that by the time these brands actually get something on the shelf, it's no longer trendy. That means it'll just sit there until it gets put on discount, and after that, it'll probably disappear into some landfill. I mean that seriously. Inefficient trend forecasting isn't just bad for business, it can also lead to unsustainable production practices. So from my perspective, this is a huge problem for the fashion industry right now, and it's one that AI can help us get closer to fixing. How, you may be wondering? Well, to put it simply, AI is better at predicting trends than we are. It can draw more insights from a much larger set of data, thus allowing us to pick up on things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. To put this into context, I want to use the company Tech as an example. This is in no way sponsored by Tech, they just happen to be one of the leaders in this area, and I think that their approach is a good, clear-cut example of how AI can be applied to trend forecasting. So, some background. Tech was founded back in 2013 by two machine learning PhDs who saw an enormous amount of untapped potential in social media. More specifically, they saw untapped potential in the massive amounts of data being uploaded to social media that no one really knew how to analyze. On apps like Twitter, it's much easier to identify things that are trending because a simple web scraping tool can figure out which words are being used the most in a given period of time. And even on Instagram, I guess you could do the same with hashtags. But on a photo-centric media platform like Instagram, the part we really care about is the photos. Nowadays, you can see certain insights on Instagram photos, such as how many people have liked, commented, or even viewed the photo, but those insights don't rise to the level of artificial intelligence. A million likes on a photo of a guy wearing a tank top doesn't necessarily mean that tank tops are trending. So that's what the PhDs over at Heratech set out to do. They set out to create an AI tool that can identify and forecast trends using photos. According to their website, here's how it works. Step 1 is defining representative panels. This step is the most manual of the entire process because it involves them handpicking the fashion-forward influencers that they're going to analyze. This is their way of ensuring that they're analyzing people that actually set trends and that they're targeting different segments of the market, which, as you can imagine, is important because there are different types of influencers and there are different types of trends. So once that's determined, Heratech's computer vision technology begins analyzing millions upon millions of images from public social media accounts, and in doing so, they're able to evaluate more than 3,000 details, including stuff like color, fabric, texture, and shape. To me, that's one of the most impressive things about this technology. If I showed you a picture and asked you to list 100 different qualities, you would probably have a hard time. I know that I would. But Heratech is able to list thousands of qualities in a fraction of the time. So that's how they collect their data. But here is where the fun starts. Next, their machine learning forecasting algorithms take that data and make predictions about emerging trends. Their site claims that they've achieved a 90% accuracy rate, meaning that 9 out of 10 times, they've been right about the trends that they predict. That's based on 6 years of historical data, and while I'd be interested to see the metrics they use to calculate their accuracy, the results are pretty convincing. Once those forecasts have been made, the final step is for Heratech to upload those to their market intelligence platform, which is the platform that brands can use to access these insights. Among the brands that have used Heratech, there's Prada, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Adidas, Moncler, New Balance, and many others. After using Heratech, New Balance design director Brad Lacey said, "With machine learning, you can predictably know where to take up to 80% of your collection. You're left with 20% of the collection to know what you can innovate." I mean, that's pretty amazing, and that's why brands are now turning to AI companies like Heratech. It's no secret that fashion brands have been trying to do this type of analysis for years now, but now that the technology is catching up, I think we're going to see this become common practice. Anyways, that concludes my spiel about making products that people want to buy, but now let's talk about making people want to buy products, or in other words, marketing. While it may be minute, there is a difference between using consumer insights to create brand strategy and using consumer insights to execute brand strategy. In the previous section, I talked about how consumer insights are used to create brand strategy. If you can figure out what people will want ahead of time, you can design and produce that product and then trust that they'll come looking for it. Pretty simple. But when you're using consumer insights to execute brand strategy, we're assuming that you already have a product that you want to produce, and you're going to use the consumer insights to figure out who to sell it to. Like I said just a minute ago, that's called marketing, and it's easier said than done. Much like trend forecasting, marketing strategies have the potential to be wildly inefficient. For instance, have you ever gotten an ad on Instagram that made 0 sense? Like the other day, I got one for a pool cleaning service, and I don't even have a pool. The advertisers who paid to have that ad put on my feed wasted their money because there's a 0% chance that I would need to use their service. But then think about this. Have you ever gotten an ad for something that was eerily spot on? Like you've been thinking about taking a trip to Tulum, and then all of a sudden there's an advertisement on your feed for a resort in Tulum? As creepy as that may be, that's highly efficient marketing, because the resort had their advertisement presented to someone considering a trip to Tulum. So what's the difference? Well, it's hard to say for certain, but if I had to guess, that pool advertisement may have been blasted out to anyone and everyone in my local geography just because it's summertime. In other words, they were casting a very wide net. The resort, on the other hand, seems to have been using some more advanced insights. Perhaps you recently clicked on a post about Tulum, or liked a picture of somebody else's trip to Tulum, so they had a reason to believe that you yourself might be interested in going there. For you, that was true, and for others it may not have been, But the point is that they used data about you, the consumer, to place a targeted advertisement, and that made it much more efficient than the pool cleaning advertisement. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'm telling you this because AI can take this whole process and make it exponentially more efficient. Instead of extracting insights from a single like or Google search, AI can take thousands and thousands of data points to make inferences about who might be interested in a particular product or service. So in the context of fashion, think about it like this. In the previous section, we discussed how a brand could use AI to forecast that there will be an uptick in demand for red shirts 2 months from now. But let's say that at the moment, the brand only has purple shirts in stock. Well, rather than throwing their hands up and saying that they have a bunch of useless purple shirts, they can use AI to find customers who already want purple shirts. There doesn't need to be some big purple shirt trend. They can just pinpoint individuals from all around the world that are more likely to want one. Again, I am of course simplifying things a bit because the obvious question would be, how do you build an algorithm that can determine if somebody wants a purple shirt? I don't know the answer to that question, but the brands that figure out how to are going to have a major advantage. And look, that's sort of what AI in fashion is all about. It's about the ability to draw conclusions from large sets of unstructured, unquantifiable, and seemingly unrelated data. In other words, it's about making sense of traditional and alternative data sources. While this technology is relatively new, I can see a world where everything you want is placed in front of you before you even know you want it. And to some extent, I think that's already happening. In fact, I'd say that many of the changes I've talked about so far are already in motion, and it sounds like there's a lot of benefits. But if we're going to talk about those benefits, I think it's important that we also talk about the dangers. Let me start by saying that I have no intention of fear-mongering. I personally believe that AI is going to have a hugely positive impact on the fashion industry, as it will just about every other industry. But it's only right that I acknowledge the accompanying concerns, some of which I've already touched on. To start, one of the loudest arguments against the use of AI is that it could destroy creativity. And to me, this is more of a philosophical dilemma. If you take several reference images and then tell an algorithm what to make from those reference images, do you yourself have any artistic license over what the algorithm makes? Some people would argue yes, and some people would argue no. I mean, it does sound a bit dystopian. Imagine a world where some big brand decides that they're going to start using AI for everything they do. They use it to forecast trends and learn that bucket hats are going to be a huge summer trend. And then they turn to AI once again and say, hey, bucket hats are going to be a big thing this summer. Here are our signature design elements. Make a bucket hat that matches our brand's aesthetic. After that, they send personally targeted advertisements to everyone on social media that is statistically likely to want one of their bucket hats. And just like that, AI has done most of, if not all of, the hard work. In many cases, I'm sure that the end consumer wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, but to me, that all sounds a little bit disheartening. If all new design ideas are based on designs that already exist, innovation could come to a screeching halt, and I don't think anybody wants that. If I had to guess, I'd say that there will be a handful of major legal battles in the coming years where the validity of generative design will be on the chopping block. As far as the outcomes of those legal battles, your guess is as good as mine. But anytime a new technology emerges, there's always a feeling out period where people test the limits of what's acceptable and what's not. For AI, that will most certainly be the case. Now, another problem is the human element. We've been hearing for years now that robots are going to take people's jobs, and there's a real chance that AI could accelerate that. Something I can't emphasize enough is that not everyone in the fashion industry is a designer. It's supported by merchandisers, marketers, logistics managers, sales associates, stylists, customer service representatives, the list goes on. And while AI could prove to be a great tool for some of the people in these roles, it could also threaten to replace them. Once again, there will be arguments for and against this. One argument I often hear made is that we shouldn't slow down advancements in new technology just to protect jobs. This is how it's always worked since the beginning of time, and there's no reason that this is any different. As someone who uses the digital kiosk at McDonald's, it would be hypocritical for me to refute that point. But what I will say is that the fashion industry is different because fashion is an art form. If Amazon can use AI to improve their supply chain and get my packages quicker, that's great. But the concept of an AI stylist doesn't seem that great. In fact, I can see that going horribly wrong. By now, you may have heard about AI hallucinations, and they're one of the biggest concerns in this space right now. It refers to instances where AI produces a result that is objectively false and presents it as true. You've probably seen several examples of this online where people post a snippet of something that ChatGPT got wrong. I think it's a good sign that people are surprised when ChatGPT gets something wrong, because that means it's usually reliable. But in instances where it's wrong, it's very wrong, and that opens the door for a huge amount of risk. In certain fields like medicine and finance, these hallucinations could potentially have a much more consequential impact. But there could be consequential impacts on fashion as well. AI confidently tells you that based on recent data, jean shorts are making a major comeback. So you produce thousands of pairs of jean shorts, only to find out that jean shorts were never cool, so a comeback was never even possible. On a more serious note, miscalculations of and false assumptions about supply, demand, cost, and strategy could spell disaster for some brands. That's why there's going to need to be a balance. A balance where AI makes us better, but doesn't replace us. Anyways, that's all for this episode. There is a lot to discuss here, and I'm more than happy to, so let me know what you think down in the comments. Is AI good for fashion? Is AI bad for fashion? Can there be a balance? There's also a bunch of other applications for this technology that I didn't get into, so if you've thought of any, be sure to let me know. As a reminder, please check out the Threaducation Patreon. It's an easy way for you to support the channel while also getting access to exclusive episodes where I go deeper into topics like these. Other than that, thank you all for watching Threaducation, and I will see you next time.